Great. So welcome to day number 3 of TEC Expo. I'm very happy to have you all here, and I'm looking forward to the presentations we're going to be having today. So far, it's been a great journey. We had good presentations on Tuesday and yesterday, of course, which was the in-person day, was very fun. And we have been learning a lot of interesting ways in which technology can be applied in the classroom. So I'm sure that's going to be the same thing today because we have 2 amazing presentations happening. So I'm Eduardo Rebaglietti. I'm the Learning Technology Specialist here at ETS. And we're going to begin with the opening remarks by Dr. Natasha Boschkic, who is the ETS Director and Math Lecturer here at the Faculty of Education. Dr. Boschkic, welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, Eduardo. It's really my pleasure to be here today and to do this job, and this job that I really really like. So I would like to start with just with a land acknowledgement. As you know, we are so lucky and privileged to be on this land, and we acknowledge that UBC Vancouver is situated on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. It is my pleasure to open today and to think about TEC Expo because I'm so immersed, of course, with our team in technology and the changes that are happening over the years. And I have been lucky, I guess, to be part of the Faculty of Education for over 20 years and even longer to be in this field. And when I was thinking about TEC Expo and this year's TEC Expo, I was thinking about the focus of it and the previous couple of years that we all went through and how COVID forced everyone, including us who were already working with technology a lot, to rethink what technology can and cannot do. And I think as much as I see it almost as a pendulum, right? Sometimes you have all the fascination and happy about technology, and then it goes the other way. And I think maybe we are closer to the other way at the moment because people were so saturated with with being on Zoom and having to use technology. But at the same time, I think there has been, I hope, this recognition that we can do more than we maybe thought we can do. Right. So for ordinary people, for different ages and different contexts, and especially at this year's TEC Expo with a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and particularly today's sessions that are going into some of the technologies that maybe our team hasn't experienced as much or hasn't worked on as much is really exciting. So looking into what else, and I think that's the part of my job and of being in this field that is exciting for me and that keeps me in this job because there is always something different, something else that we haven't discovered, and learning is always part of that big journey. So I'm really looking forward to hearing both of the presentations, and I hope everyone will enjoy. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Boschkic. So our agenda for today, like I was mentioning, we have 2 presentations. The first one is going to be Augmentative and Alternative Communication Simulator, presented by Tammy McEachern, Gabriel Coombs, and Michelle Hume. Then that's going to take us 45 minutes from 12 p.m. to 12:45 p.m. Then we're going to go into presentation number 2. That's going to be increasing the accessibility of video, which with Michael Sider from UBC Studios, and that's going to be from 12:45 to 1:30. And finally, we're going to have our virtual social event at Gather Town. We'll explain you how to get into that space once we reach that point. So yes, let's get started. Welcome to presentation number 1. Any of the presenters can take it on right now?
I think we'll be starting at 12.
Oh, yes. So, okay, so we have some time. So maybe you can take a couple of minutes to get a cup of coffee or anything. So let's take a little break and we'll take it back at 12. See you there. Good, so it's 12. We can continue now. Once again, the first presentation is going to be on augmentative and alternative communication simulation. So welcome again to our presenters, Tammy McEachern, Gabriel Coombs, and Michelle Kuhn. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Eduardo. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now.
Yep.
Let me know if everyone can see it.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I will probably get started. This is the Augmentative and Alternative Communication, or AAC VR simulator. I'm Gabrielle Coombs, and I am one of the learning designers at ETS. But this is obviously not just my project. I have been joined by two wonderful partners here today, Tammy and Michelle. So I will let Tammy introduce herself first, and then Michelle.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tammy McEachern-Hughes, and I am a speech-language pathologist. And my area of specialty has been for quite some time, augmentative and alternative communication. And yeah, super happy to be able to share even more of our vision. I'll let Michelle introduce herself.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm Michelle, and I am one of the WorkLearn students at UBC Emerging Media Lab, and I had the honor of working on this project with Gabrielle and Tammy.
Thank you, Michelle. So to get started, we'd like to give you a bit of an overview of what we'll be looking at today. We'll talk a little bit about what AAC is, the project assignment that really got us started looking at how we could develop this simulator, why we decided to go with virtual reality as a way to go about our project, and then the fantastic work that was done by the EML student team. What happened next after we submitted our proposal, and then we'll talk a little bit about what our plans are for moving forward with the project. So with that, I will hand over to Tammy, who can go through what AAC is.
Thanks, Gabby. So as you can read this fantastic definition or that encompasses all the pieces I feel for about AAC. So AAC, augmentative or alternative. So just the nature of the language there. Augmentative means to simply augment, which we are all masters of. We are augmenting the way we communicate all the time, from a hello to a point to a vocalization to so many other things. And alternative is when we really don't have the ability to do that point or to actually use any vocalizations at all. So we need something to alternatively help us with our communication. And it covers, you know, the whole gamut. And I've worked with and had the opportunity to be a party of some tremendous growth, from littles all the way to the other end of the continuum, and in many different ways. And it's an exciting way to bring opportunity for anybody to communicate and be heard and understood. And so that's really what I think AAC really tells us about. And it led me to, and I'll go to the next slide there, Gabby, led me to having this this assignment for our students. And this assignment was really to think about how you would design some kind of communication system so that you could communicate if you were indeed not able to use spoken language. And so you'd be looking at things such as even just being able to predict what needed language is there. And in order to do that, you need to have to kind of think about what that would mean, what you couldn't do and what you could do. And that allowed them to design a communication board, and they had free for all. It could be from line drawings to images from downloaded, and organize it in a way to see how they could actually interact at a meal, and then reflect and see what they could have done or what strategies would be important to have if they were indeed somebody that didn't have a voice and needed to have some augmentation or an alternative way. So really the next step was, let's move it into a way where there's less of a stake in it, because it was harder for them to understand what it was like. And that's what kind of brought the thought of our project.
Yeah. So Tammy and I met earlier this year, and we were talking about the assignment and thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do something with virtual reality? And so behind this sort of idea, aside from the novelty, the cool factor of doing something in virtual reality, is that it is super immersive, but also incredibly low stakes. So we wanted to give people the opportunity, once they built their communication board, in the assignment as it currently exists, they do it with a partner in person. By doing it in a VR space, yes, it's immersive, but also they are put into a position where they have the point of view of somebody who would be using a communication board to communicate, and without other communication means of communication available to them. So we are hoping that it would put people into a sort of slightly more empathetic position when they're thinking about how they can communicate in this particular circumstance. Obviously, the immersion's a big part, but what we really liked about the idea of putting it into VR is that they could do it again and again and again. Mm-hmm. They could do it on their own time, in their own space. And especially considering, as Tammy was saying, the piece on, they test out this board and then they reflect upon it. Wouldn't it be great if they had the opportunity to then evaluate the board, make it again, and then go back in to test it to see what had changed? So we're really sort of going into that inquiry-based pedagogies, the idea of students being able to ask those questions, test things out, reflect, evaluate, and then go back in and do it again. So VR sort of presents not only just the immersion, but also the iteration, the ability to do things multiple times in that really low stakes environment where people are able to make mistakes and then learn from their mistakes. With that, though, obviously, we understand that simulation, especially when it comes to disability, can be quite fraught. Simulation's not perfect, and it's definitely not the same as living with a disability by any means. In our research, we've seen some studies that have incredibly positive reactions to using disability simulators for encouraging empathy. Others are not as positive. Some of them say that, it is better if it's done in person, which is absolutely true. That being said, we want to put especially students who maybe are coming from the perspective of maybe getting into working with people who are complex communication users, but maybe have absolutely no experience or very little experience of communicating in these circumstances, to have a space where they could test out these communication strategies without the added sort of baggage of feeling like they might be offending someone or making someone uncomfortable, and also so that they can test out what works and doesn't work. So really, when we're thinking about this as a simulation, it's less of a disability simulator and more framing this simulation as a communication experience. We're simulating what it would be like to try to have a meal when the only means of communication you have is this communication board. How can you get your needs met? So the idea is to really have those students focusing on that rather than pretending to be somebody with a disability. So we had the idea, we thought about it, we thought VR's the way to go, and then we got in touch with the Emerging Media Lab, and we had just the most fantastic and amazing student team. I really want to highlight the work that Ray, Michelle, Olivia, Michael, Jenna, and Vita did. Tammy and I think we're both so impressed every week when we met with them, and can't sing their praises enough. We'd also like to say a big thank you to Catherine Winters, who is also part of EML, for all of the work that she did helping us out with this project. So this is what the EML student team did. The first piece that they made was a board maker site. So lots of these already exist, but the idea with the site is that we want students to be able to create, edit, and review their AAC boards, but have it able to be linked to the virtual reality space, so they can build it in one space and then log into their VR environment, and that board will be there immediately. So it's pretty cool. They have this Drupal hosted website, which I'll demonstrate a little in a moment. And the cool thing about it is that you log in and you can put in all of your own icons and make your board. So for students who are maybe learning about communication boards for the first time, this is a good space for them to play around. And then once it's there, they've saved it. They use it in the VR environment. And if it's not working, then they can go back to this board maker site, move things around, remove things, add things, and see if it works differently the next time. So I'll quickly demonstrate what this website looks like. It's pretty great. It is obviously not in its full finished format, but you can see here it's a nice sort of bare bones create a board site. So if I click on create a new board, I get taken to a space. I can create the title of my board. So this could be example AAC board. I can put a description in if I want to, and then I can add content items. So it's nice that I have all of these options available to me below, but I'm going to be trying to have a meal and probably not collecting various animals. So I'm going to add a content item in that, for example, say the way that I want to communicate, maybe I want the word yes. So I could add the text and then I can choose a file. And so I'm just going to add an icon that I have prepared. And then I can add my icon and create the content item. And so now this is the beginning of my board and it's starting to take shape. And so students would then add different items to it. For example, for me, maybe I want the word want. I can choose my icon and create the item. And then if I wanted to move things around, I can just shift them, drag and drop, which is quite nice. And then once it's done, I can save it and preview what it looks like. And then if I'm not happy with it, I can go back and edit. And so what's really nice about this site is that they can go in, change things around. They can use icons which are also relevant to them. You know, meals are something that are really, really different depending on who you are, where you're coming from. Everyone eats different things. So being able to personalize those boards is a really, really cool and key piece to this. And then also you can save more than one board. You can have many and then use those in your VR environment and compare and contrast how they worked. So that is the board maker site. I'm going to pass over to Michelle now, who was one of the lead developers in the VR environment. So I will let her speak to that.
Thank you, Gabrielle. So once a person is ready to test out their board, they can hop into the virtual environment. And the goal of this virtual environment is to simulate a conversation with AAC boards in a place where they have a little bit more context in a classroom, and this will hopefully increase immersion. For our environment, we ended up using a Unity desktop build, and although the project initially proposed using VR, one of the things that we found was students don't typically have access to VR headsets, so there's an issue of accessibility. So our initial iteration would use desktop, so it'll be like the minimal viable product. And in future implementations, we are hoping to have VR as the next step. Some of the primary features of the virtual environment include the projection of the AAC board within the environment and have both users be able to see what the other person is pointing at. There's also the primary user interface, so tutorials, menu, and quitting the application. And there are also environmental interactions, sort of like a game experience, so people can move around inside the environment and drag objects and interact with it overall. And the last feature is the video call, which is the primary method of communication with one of the partners who will be speaking vocally, while the other person will have the option of keeping their mic off. And if you can click the next slide. So here is an overview of what the virtual environment looks like. So in the very middle corner where there's like the AAC demo page is where what you will see when you initially go into the application. With the video call, there's a username and a password, which the instructor will provide to you. And once both of the partners are ready, they can just simply join in. And on the very left, there is the virtual environment, a top-down view, and two avatars with cubes on their head, which looks kind of funny. But if you go on the very right, you can see how the video call is being integrated within. And on the very top, you can see that the AAC board is kind of zoomed in, and that's intentional. So it's easier for both parties to see what the other person has selected. Once they are done interacting with it, they can just simply leave, or if they want to learn how to interact with the environment, they can press start tutorial. And as nice as this looks initially, there are some things that we are planning on expanding on. So one of the things was user statistics. So this would be where the user is able to track how much time they spent in an environment and what options they have ended up clicking and how many times. And this can be kind of like a quantitative evaluation of the effectiveness of their board essentially. And once we are done that, we are hoping to have full integration of the virtual and the website to have a cohesive product for the term use. And I will let Gabrielle talk about the next steps.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So our next steps will involve obviously building the working product for use in the next offering of the course. We're really hoping to get some student feedback because that is, you know, as something that they're going to have to use. We want to really make sure that it's going to work for them and is also going to ensure that they meet those learning outcomes that they need to. We're also pursuing TLEF funding. So we're having all of our fingers crossed, I think, that we get it. But the project has just been, aside from, you know, a really incredibly interesting endeavor, just an absolute joy to do. I know I personally have enjoyed working with EML so much, and the WorkLearn students have been fantastic. So if anyone is ever interested in pursuing a project, I would highly recommend getting in touch with EML. It's been great. Tammy, do you have any final pieces that you want to share before we move to questions?
I just, yes, just to reiterate, blah, and I'm getting stuck on words. See, that's when I need some visuals, which actually I happen to have behind me just to sort of, you know, plant the seed on what we're working with. I think that the exciting piece is how this morphs the dynamics of the course and makes it a little bit particular to this particular assignment, allows the students to actually have a better opportunity to create and think and reflect. And like you said, to continue to grow, as this is an initial assignment in the program. And what I see this as broader, and which is why we're looking at other avenues of moving forward with this with the TLEF funding, is that there is so much room to grow this within that learning environment in my own profession, as well as broader in school-based systems, you know, all over. So I'm eager to try it in this way because it's as a little lower stakes, but it's an exciting way of getting introduced to it. And hey, AAC is that it does go from low tech to high tech. So I mean, we're running in that range. So using some technology is something that anybody who uses AAC generally has to become an expert at themselves. So yeah, it's just, we're open to questions. If anything pops in, be happy to go there.
Yeah, great. So yes, this is, I think, the part where I'll stop sharing my screen, and if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to ask myself, Tammy, or Michelle.
Well, I'd like to say that thank you for the presentation. It's been really interesting, and I actually got to experience it in person. I tried it and I thought it was fantastic, both the website version and also the VR version. And I think like those elements really add engagement, and people can feel more empathy as they connect through that. So that was fantastic. And I guess well, as we wait for questions from the audience, I have one question, which is how would it be expanded if the fund is if you get the fund? What ideas do you have for that?
For expanding, yeah. I mean, I can talk, I mean, and Tammy, I'm sure can as well, but one of the really cool things about the subject or the course that we sort of envisioned this in for originally is this sort of interdisciplinary place. They have students coming from lots of different disciplines. So people who are part of kinesiology, people who are OTs, people who are doing speech language pathology, people in nursing and medicine, as well as in education. So
and in
just
law
because we have this, yeah,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah, I had lawyers and commercial. Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. So it's almost like a little microcosm of the university in a way, which is really cool. So because of that, you know, for me, I think, wow, this would be so useful for like medical students if they were learning about, you know, bedside manner and how to communicate with people who maybe are complex communication users. Tammy, do you have any other ideas of how it could be applied?
Oh, and simply training too. I mean, building fantastic communication partners is my goal in that class, in any event, and with actually everybody I work with, every team I work with. I'm working with someone who has some needs and some direction on where they need to go with their communication, but my team is everyone in their environment and building their capacity. So trying to make that even broader and thinking of what VR can really bring to some of those situations. I mean, I have all kinds of opportunities to, you know, shadowing and such like that I present in a school-based setting, but to be able to start teasing this out, and like I said, it's an easier to do. You're not feeling so afraid. Being a communication partner for somebody who's with someone who's non-vocal, most people are like this. we go down to something simple. We don't even want to test it, and I think this allows us to really test it and have an expectation that that individual that may be an AAC user has a lot to say. So that's what I'm hoping to grow with that. And Natasha, I see you have your hand up too.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for this wonderful presentation and for all the ideas, right? It just starts like going on. And we also had yesterday at the in-person TEC EXPO event, we had a couple who was working with AAC devices and things because their kid has those needs.
Yep.
But despite of the technology and my excitement about the virtual environment, I actually have a question about your assignment itself. So just when you put this, and you said that's one of the initial assignments that students do, what are the surprises or what are the aha moments that you see with your students? Because I think these are the areas where we don't normally go, right?
That's right.
We have general courses about this and general courses about that, but when it goes into those specific areas, I don't think a lot of people are exposed unless they need to, right?
Thank you for that question. What I find is really exciting, what I do as a result of this is, and it's really for the opportunity. It's for the opportunity for them to explore. So it's an assignment that is, you know, they do well because I'm really not, they can't make a mistake on it if they really do the work, right? And the work is simply create this board. But for creating a board, they have to be thinking of, what image? Where should I put? What might I need there? So just even thinking what language I can fit, and I only give them 32 spots. So I also say, guess what? You can only say 32, you know, you can combine them in whatever way, but that's where it's at. And they could also make them a little bit bigger. So like more message based. So what's interesting is after they're asked to sort of, the takeaway that I love is when they reflected on what the communication partner had to do, the extra steps they had to do, that they had to observe more closely. They had to anticipate a little bit to have something ready, and be reading more that room than they normally would. Because if you're normally just expecting somebody to just point to, I want more, you know, I could be telling you I want more just by looking at something. It's really to expand that conversation. And so some of them found that how it made them feel, and that was a side note. And it's really when they had family that talked a lot and really tried a lot in the beginning, if it was family that helped, that by the end, it was sort of like they kind of had their own conversation, and the non-vocal individual with the communication board was going, nodding a lot and not part of. So keeping that, having that connectivity to grow with that and have an expectation that someone always has a voice. You just need to set the stage a bit. And that's really why I do that one. So the ahas on there are just like, wow, I didn't believe how I would feel. I didn't believe how tiring it would be to simply, you know, be finding the language at the time that I'm trying to do a task. And it challenges us to think about how easy it is for us to just say what we want. And we're literate, and as articulate as we are, it doesn't matter that it's the literacy piece that you're really giving a chance to show to. It allows someone who uses AAC to demonstrate to you that, guess what? I just don't need to say more. I can say, I want more. It's really good. We can build the language so the level is more obvious. So many things, Natasha. I'll have coffee and tell you so many.
Is the audio, or the messages are in text or in audio format, or both?
That's right. So during this assignment, it is a low-tech board. So the way in which they could do it, if they determined that they were going to be able to point, they were able to access and point to a board, they would just point to their messages and show the communication partners. If they didn't want to be able to do that, some of them chose to be like this fellow right beside me, that they didn't have access to touch. So they were just looking. They had to actually build the skill set of being a communication partner, like with partner assisted scanning, we're saying, is it in this row? And building some strategies. So some of them intuitively learned that or tried it. It was low tech, and in other cases the communication partners were the ones that would say it. And so even knowing that you can be invested in this, I just don't point to it and you automatically go, oh, you want more? You just say, I want more. Oh, you want more. So you speak sort of with them, but also could reflect and confirm. So it gives a chance to really not just move on something and anticipate and do what you think, but to sort of describe it, state what you're thinking it means, because that's the thing that's lost. Sometimes we just jump and because we think that's what it is, and then confirming. So is that right? And getting a yes or no, and even building how fluid that yes and no can look like.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I talk a lot. I like communication. Sorry.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was also going to mention of the presentation we had in the in-person event yesterday, but that one had audio, so it was a little bit different, but also for people who had trouble communicating. So I was wondering if maybe when, as this gets expanded, maybe would that be something you would be interested in exploring?
So adding that audio component to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all of the communication systems that they get a chance to see later, they do get a chance to see that in through the time in our course, because yes, having voice output is the next level of communication, and a low tech level of like a communication board. Both of these examples here have somebody using it as an eye gaze, and the other is looking at a device and could touch. But on the table here beside me, there's like a low tech board or a flip board. So there's a range, and we don't just use one type. So where it might be really appropriate to have a communication partner to anticipate and ask, so is that right? And wait for you to indicate eyes up for yes and no. There's another time when it's really valuable for saying, yes, you're exactly correct, with their eye, with either switch access, touching directly, or using, an alternate way, a head mouse or eye gaze to select a message and speak it. So yeah, that's definitely a place to grow for sure. But this is how I start them, so they get a chance to see what does the map look like. How tricky is it?
Yeah, I can see it's a very exploratory process, just like trying out things to see what works best for the people who are going to be using it eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Any more questions?
I do have more questions, but unless someone else has a question, I don't want to name. So just so you know that I do have a question.
Okay. Let's see if anyone would like to ask another question. Okay, I think you can go ahead.
Okay, so this question is for every single person in the team. So from your own perspective as a learning designer, as a developer, as an instructor, so how do you think that this virtual environment will enhance what you had before? Like, what is different when they are interacting in the virtual environment versus doing it in the way you did already, or when you're designing for something like that? Or again, Michelle, for you, like what are the considerations when you are designing that virtual environment? What is important to have?
Yeah.
I think it's
I mean,
important. Oh, sorry.
yeah, go Michelle. I think you let's start development.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had to keep in mind was what we initially thought, and then just going through constant iterations, because initially when we designed this, we thought, okay, do we actually need this, or what is this trying to accomplish? We had to see what the purpose was in the things that we implemented. So for the kitchen environment, yeah, interacting with objects is a cool feature, but what does it accomplish? And then we determined that it would be accomplishing increased immersion, and that's why we kept the feature. Some other features was were kind of left out was a menu system. We found that there weren't very many things to do in an environment, and that a tutorial was more effective. So we ended up scrapping the menu and using a tutorial instead, essentially. And we were hoping to streamline the process because of that, so that users are able to use the application more effectively. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you.
I think so. I think from my perspective, when we were talking about it initially, one of the issues that, I mean, not that, I mean, issue maybe isn't quite the right word, but one of the things that I think Tammy had noticed was that because they were doing this in person with a friend. And so one thing that we really wanted as part of the VR environment that is sort of part of this is potentially having your communication partner be a particular person. Are they a familiar person? Are they somebody who is unfamiliar? How are they going to react to you as well? Those were some pieces that we were thinking, you know, wouldn't it be great if, you know, as somebody who, you know, who uses AAC would have experienced, not everyone is going to be an amazing communication partner. Not everyone is going to be confident, and not everyone is going to know how to react to you. And so by having this platform where we can have the ability to sort of tweak those things, allow a scenario for, you know, in a kitchen that's comfortable, or in a place where it's maybe less comfortable, or with somebody who you're less comfortable with, adding that piece so that they get that experience of, it's not just a one size fits all board, you know, there's the situation, there's who you're communicating with, there's how confident that partner is. And I think too, what the VR space does is, because if you're doing it in person, you don't really necessarily have a lot of time to go back, reflect, and then try it again. This way, they have a really, really easy way of going, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to go back to my board maker now. I'm going to take 5 minutes, move a few things around, and I'm going to jump right back in. So it gives that sort of in the moment learning opportunity as well, where they get the time to reflect, but it's flexible enough that they can tweak things and then try them again, rather than, you know, having a piece of paper that they've spent time gluing things to or editing in a Word document that they then have to print and then bring to an in-person space and use it that way. They can really quickly digitally change it and try it again. And so that way we potentially have the opportunity for more iterations, more reflection and evaluation, which I think is a great outcome. Tammy, what do you?
Yeah. And I mean, the only opportunity they really had was, like you said, they had their one-off that they're doing and they're submitting and they are reflecting, they're thinking about what they're sharing out and what they felt from their experience. What I did is, after, like, with all their permission, I said, I'm going to just circulate everybody's board so you get to see the diversity and the variety of symbol choices, organization, language people thought were important, just a visual. And so I actually did, I shared it with Gabby, a PowerPoint. I got their permission, not their, I do have their names on it, and they were cool with that. It was in the class. I got permission. I know that part, but shared it with them so they could get a chance to sort of see, wow, I never thought of using color like that, or I didn't think about that kind of language. So it really, but that was their only chance of really sort of reviewing it, like as a group even. So it really gives a lot of learning opportunity just as an individual, let alone their experiences. They could then, I just see the sharing out just so exponentially growing, because there's just so many more opportunities and tweakings that they experienced in creating their board and the perceived outcome of the language exchange. There's still room to sort of massage, how does that communication partner feel? Because yes, if it's virtual reality, it's very different. but it's another option, right? And I'm sure they're going to take their boards and use it with their family and such too, and bring even that breadth of it. So I'm just sort of saying, yeah, we'll give you this thing, but guess what? You're going to grow so much faster with it, and it sets the course up for all the rest of the tools they get exposed to and the strategies and opportunities.
Thanks again.
You're welcome. Yeah,
That's
I'm a little
wonderful.
excited about it.
Just a little.
Tap me down, tap me down.
I might have misunderstood the question. I didn't really answer it at all. I think,
No.
yeah, is it okay if I expand on it?
Yeah, of course.
So, on the point when I was mentioning, discussing the purpose of the features. So one of the things that I think the virtual environment will do a really good job of is keeping track of things that would otherwise be awkward when done in person. So imagine that you are trying to see how many times you use the word want versus how many times you use the word of a physical objects. If you try to do it in person, it will kind of be like, oh yeah, I used water one time, tally mark, and that can sort of break you out of the immersion. But with a virtual environment, assuming that the statistics tracker will keep track of how many times you count it, you can just continue your conversation like normal and focus more on not how many times you use something, but, oh, how can I use this to communicate effectively? So in a sense, it kind of helps the person focus on what's important rather than trying to hyper focus on, did I do the assignment well, if you understood what I mean. Another thing that we wanted to implement but didn't quite have the time to do was, oh, how can we implement an AI to do it? Because we were kind of discussing, oh, should we do a video call or should we have like an AI do a response? And if we were to do an AI kind of response, what kinds of things will we be going for? And you would probably be expected to get the tailored experience of a partner that's not good versus a really good partner, and be able to feel the range of emotions that someone who has difficulty speaking with other people might be feeling, versus someone who knows what they're doing, essentially. But that's kind of like really complicated implementation. So for the video, there's also the benefit of communicating with the partner face-to-face, whereas with the AI, you can do it in your own time. So there's just like a lot of options that are available when done virtually, whereas with in person, there's only so much you can do.
Totally. I want to,
that's
hit the
a good
nail on the
point.
head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's behind the scene, right? That we don't know, and that's important. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think as well, like having those data points that Michelle was talking about, like how many times I use this button, you're right. It does totally take you out of the immersive experience if you're trying to track things. And by having, a digital space where that's all done automatically, that enriches that reflection. When they come to that point, they can go, okay, well, I put bread on my board because I ate bread, but I actually didn't use it at all. And now that I think about it, it doesn't really make sense in the context of the rest of my board. So I'll change it for something else because I didn't use it at all, but I used all these other buttons a bunch of times. So yeah, having that data to back up or to sort of add to their reflecting and evaluation is really cool.
Yeah, thanks. That's right. Perfect, Michelle. And thank you, Gabby, because one of the things they are asked is to indicate whether they used a word or message or not. But it's just, they just had to think of, did I use it? And they checked off. And it was a reflection to say, think about what content was really important for that experience that you were in, but they didn't get a chance. And what this opportunity allows them is to see how frequently they're using something. So a higher frequency hit would be something that would be maybe positioned in a more valuable spot on a communication board that's more accessible and readily, used. So whether you pivot from a bottom or top, and there's all kinds of great layouts that support that. But seeing what the word frequency of use or the combination of messages is fantastic data for them to start growing with. And it's what as in my profession we're doing all the time. I need to have the biggest bang for my buck on this real estate for this individual, and so you got to see what really is used a lot, and they'd be ready to be sharing that and being prepared to have that language available, or modeling even what it looks like. Even if it wasn't a communication board, they could say, oh, you want something, and just setting up, it sets up so many connections for the communication partner.
That's super interesting, the data element.
Mm-hmm.
Really refine how things are done.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, any more questions? No? Well, in that case, I think we're good. So thank you so much for this presentation. It was really interesting. I think you have developed an amazing tool, and it has a great purpose, and it's going to help a lot of people. And I hope it keeps expanding and growing and blessing all the people who will engage with it. So thank you so much again, Gabriel, Tammy, and Michelle. It was great to hear these ideas and these experiences. And I look forward to see how it's going to evolve in the next couple of months. So please share it with us once that happens. Great. So the next presentation is increasing the accessibility of video with Michael Sider from UBC Studios. This is scheduled at 12:45, so that's in 4 minutes. So let's take a little break. You can go get a cup of coffee, drink some water, and we'll come back in 4 minutes. See you then.